Hello, and welcome to Vision Denial and World Watch 2022. My name is Sam, and if those of you who are new here, I have watched every single playoff of 2022. Yes, every single one of them, even that one. Notably, this particular series we were covering the summer of 2022 on our anticipation and preparation for Worlds. And this you have stumbled upon, or you are a regular subscriber and watcher, to the Meet the Teams portion, where I will take a look at every 24 team, their strengths, weaknesses, play styles, notable quirks, interesting things to look ahead, all in the attempts to at least teach some people who don't watch certain regions what to expect from their teams, or from the teams that are going. That said, there are two caveats to really put forward. First caveat: a lot of the things that I'm going to be talking about are data-driven. I will put a link down below to the Google Docs of all of the data I have aggregated all in one nice spot. All of the data comes from the LOL fandom, Wikipedia, and from the goal.gg website, both of which have very different focuses to their data points, and both are necessary for these kinds of videos to work. That said, there's a limitation to some of this data because the LPL doesn't send the data as consistently as the other regions, and this is something you'll find with any particular data point for LoL esports globally. The LPL will still be missing some things regarding plates, drakes at 15 minutes, and heralds. A lot of the early game is not there. That and everything relating to vision. Second thing that I have to point out, a lot of the emerging regions, specifically Oceania, Turkey, Brazil, Latin America, and Japan, their teams will have some inflated stats in their favor. That being in mind, when we're looking at their stats, a lot of them will look good, notably the Chiefs and Detonation Focus Me. So some of the stats for every team has to be taken with a grain of salt of either being maybe stronger than expected or weaker than expected by quite a bit, notably because of this kind of inflation of statistics. When you're studying data, this is the kind of adjustments you need to do. That said, team-based data will look skewed. Individual data for each player's less so, because of the kinds of data points that they keep track of. All of that to say is that a lot of the notes that I've taken are using data points that have been collected that you can all enjoy for free down below, or in the various websites that I mentioned, but taking into account a lot of the personal notes that I use in conjunction with this data to show you what to expect with these teams. Without further ado, let's take a look at this video's team. I don't know. This is a pre-recorded message. Let's take a look. Let's meet Rogue. Rogue is the first seed from the European LEC and the 5th team to qualify for the World Championships after defeating Mad Lions in a 3-2 very close match, but having a nice comeback to get the revenge 3-0 against G2 for the first seed. Let's meet their coaches. Freddy122, previously having been the coach for Team Rocket during the 2016 through 2017 season, has been with Rogue since the entirety of the 2019 through 2022 season, and has had mixed success. While CL here has been a coach across different Oceanic teams like Chief Esports Clubs and Direwolves, and briefly with a bunch of academy teams between NA and EU before settling with Rogue during the 2022 season. Rogue on paper look under average and fairly unimpressive. This very early game, neutral objective, team fight focused team does have a fairly solid coordination amongst them and good timings regarding heralds and barons, but less so regarding drakes and tend to fall off in terms of their pacing, being one of the slower teams, really depending themselves on neutral timers, either to contest drakes and not necessarily consistently, or to really focus on Baron plays on a cooldown as it comes back. It becomes a really hard tell because as much as Rogue is the first seed, the difference between how they played before facing Fnatic and after facing Fnatic is night and day, like two totally different teams. So it's just a matter of which one are we going to get. Let's meet Rogue's top laner, Odoamne. Odoamne has been a very old school player for the European scene, having been part of H2K Gaming back in the 2014 season, and having played for them, Splice, Schalke, and joining Rogue from the two at the 2021 season and staying since. He is, by all, other, there's really no way else to put it, he's fairly middling, very average in terms of top laners compared to his contemporaries going into the world stage. The thing here that concerns me more is his very limited champion pool compared to them, sporting only 7 when most of the average holds at least 11 or 12. That said, Odoamne is still a very old school player, fairly solid in understanding how to play the weak side, knows his limits and differences compared to his opponents, and should not be underestimated at any given point. Odoamne has had a fairly solid reputation within the European scene as being a consistent rock, and honestly will surprise you and any other players who underestimate him at any given point. I don't expect him to make large splashes, but I also don't expect him to be so underwhelming that it would match what is going on with his stats compared to his other contemporaries who may have had less competition overall in the scene, or their teams are relatively making their stats look better than average. Just keep an eye out for Odoamne. He will surprise you. Let's meet Rogue's jungler, Malrang. This Korean player has been through different regions, the Turkish region, the Korean region, specifically with at least the generic rings, KT Rolster, and Damwon Gaming, either part of the main roster or as a substitute jungler during the 2021 season, before joining Rogue for the 2022 season to a fairly large amount of success. And while looking at his stats, you may be wondering, he's fairly low in gold accumulation, he dies a lot, his KDA is not super solid, and his kill share is fairly low, so it doesn't necessarily justify his KDA, and I would say his kill participation is the highest of any other jungler. I repeat, his kill participation is higher than any other jungler. Malrang's MO is get in your face, you're going to take it or die. He does everything in his power to really set up his team and controlling space in a way that, yes, he'll die, but make sure that the rest of his team has a lot more success. Now, when it's good, Rogue look like geniuses, and when it's bad, Malrang looks like he just inted, for lack of a better term. But it's always within the service of setting up his team to a greater success in an angle that most other teams are very confused or lost within the chaos. He will find a way to fight you or die trying. Let's meet Rogue's mid laner, Larssen. Larssen is an incredibly effective team fighting and zone control player. Having been part of the European circuit for quite a long while, before finally making his debut on Rogue for the 2019 summer season, he's been a rather impressive player on the roster for a very long time, and this year he'll get the chance to really show off. His stats across the board show him to be amongst quite literally some terrifying players, to be top 5 or top 10, as he is regularly finding ways to be part of the plays, team fights, any kind of skirmish, controlling the space of the team fight and gaining so much from it. His gold per minute, his KDA, his kill participation, and his gold share is in either first place or within top 5, like just regardless of inflation. And that alone is impressive. If it wasn't also to the fact that you would match that with straight up watching him team fight is something to behold. My only particular worry here is that he has a fairly limited champion size pool, and while not the lowest amongst his contemporaries, it is still fairly low and shows that there is some limitation to his play. But given that there's not much of a change to this meta, I don't think it'll matter too much, and he'll be able to really flex his team fighting zone control muscles. Let's meet Rogue's bot laner, Comp. Comp made his debut in the 2020 season with Team Vitality, jumping in from main roster to substitute before jumping to Rogue in 2022 to explosive success. Honestly, looking at Comp and comparing him to his other contemporaries in the bot lane, who are, and let's face it, incredibly scary, he figures as one of the highest kill participations, one of the highest kill shares and gold shares, without giving up any, and I repeat, without giving up any opportunity to actually accumulate gold for himself. It's one thing to have a high gold share overall, but if your gold itself keeps up and is within the top 5 of any of the other players, and your KDA matches it, you are incredibly solid at team fighting, laning phase, out of laning phase gold accumulation, and you are effective at keeping your space, staying alive, and maximizing damage. Comp is the complete package of a consistent team fighting bot laner. And honestly, people should be keeping eyes on him. He will compete at an impressive level and will likely make waves and surprise some of the other players going there. Now, granted, there is something to be said about the reliance on his team to set up the fights primarily, but Comp will find any angles to really outplay his opponents. And honestly, I'm all for it. Comp should be incredibly impressive and a player to watch. Let's meet the support player for Rogue, Trimby. Trimby has made his debut after having been in the European circuit for quite some time from 2017 till 2021, makes his debut in the LEC with Rogue and has been with them since. This particular support player doesn't seem to stand out in any given way when it comes to the standard look of things, but he has one of the highest kill shares and gold shares amongst his contemporaries and a fairly high champion pool to boot. He participates with his teams in terms of the team fighting, and while his KDA and actual gold accumulation matches the same kind of pressure that his jungler Malrang has, really going in and making sure that pressure and his team is, set up in a very strong way to succeed in any given team fight. He also takes quite a bit of kills. I don't think that's intentional. I think that's just the nature of how they team fight. Trimby here has been a solid just player overall and really fits the kind of dynamic that Rogue needs. And honestly, just keep an eye out on him. He will be doing a lot of different works that is silently hidden in the background. And while maybe not the strongest at vision control or any particular aspect that would really shine as a support player, serviceable support players like Trimby in a team that does so much fighting is so necessary to making sure that everything works out cohesively. Overall, Rogue looked like a fairly solid team. It wouldn't surprise me if they made it out of groups, but I have some concern given the fact that usually during the playoff times in the LEC, Rogue fall under average, feeling very underwhelming, and historically going into Worlds have not performed as well. There's one thing to look at the stats and see their performance over the summer and go, wow, they are incredibly impressive, solid, they could be a top 8 team for sure. But there's something still in the back of my head that despite looking at all the different players, their stats, how they apply team fights, really looking at how they play their early game to really push forward, and then still think dependence on neutral objective timers, vision inconsistent, while behind. The nature of the fact that like their players don't always seem to be on point, especially Malrang, who sometimes may look lost and doesn't play to his really heavy aggressive team fighting standard. I'm here left wondering, are we going to get the rogue that impressed people so much in the 3-0 in the grand finals, or are we going to get the rogue that barely and just barely makes it out of groups, or even doesn't even do so? And honestly, I'm hoping we get the finals version, because that team going up against top esports and GAM will 100% make waves. They may go even against top esports, and even as DRX comes into Group C, if they are the ones that qualify to the group stage, honestly, I can see Rogue 100% making it out of groups. But otherwise, the high octane thrills of top esports and GAM that will match their fight to fight nature may be their downfall. But hey, that's my thoughts based off of the observations from playoffs and the stats that I have in front of me. I want to hear what you have to say in the comments down below. Let me know, do you think they're a shoo-in, guaranteed to make it out of groups, or do you have those same kind of concerns in the back of your head about past international performances and past playoff performances? I'd love to hear what you have to think in the comments down below. On the sides over here, you're going to see some more videos and playlists regarding all how they made it to Worlds, how all the different other playoffs that happened, the other teams that qualified, and my thoughts over the last couple of weeks from when I watched all of these particular playoffs. If you like this kind of content, leave a like and subscribe. And thank you again for watching. I really appreciate it. And with that, I will see you next time.